Hello ladies and gentlemen, today's video is going to be covering a game I played in the Caro Kann defense against a very strong 2300 rated player. The purpose of this video is to demonstrate that the Caro Kann is still very effective at even very high levels, and I'm going to just show you guys some theory, some of the main ideas and concepts, and hopefully you guys will find this video informative and entertaining. So let's get right into it. Now, at the moment I played this game, I was an 1800 player. This might not have been extremely reflective of my actual rating, but hopefully you guys will still see that this is a very strong player and we were able to pretty much outplay him using the Caro Kann. So the game was an advanced Caro Kann. We got this setup with c3. This is something that you will see a ton in the Panov-Bobinic variation, which is the variation I recommend. I prefer it over bishop f5 just because it gets really complex and most people aren't familiar with the Panov-Bobinic. The main line in this kind of situation is to, instead of playing knight f3, is to take the pawn. After e6, play a3. And then we get like a really complicated position. Actually, it's not that complicated, but it depends how well you are familiar with these sort of lines. But I have an entire video dedicated to this. It'll be linked somewhere above me. Go check it out. You guys will probably find this useful if you haven't already. And instead we got a knight f3, which is what most people play. Takes, and bishop g4. So we developed this bishop. Instead of f5, bishop g4 is a nice square because it pins this knight to the queen. Now, no matter what our opponent plays, we're always going to be able to play e6 and close down this sort of pawn structure. So bishop e3 invites the move queen b6. Queen b6 was not the best move by far. I really didn't think this one through. I mean, this is a 10-minute game, and as you can see, I barely spent any time on this move. I mean, better would have been just e6, and then probably something like queen c7, b5, a6 type of ideas, trying to just push these pawns. Or even queen b6 in the future. Right now, this isn't as effective, but the point is that we're targeting both of these pawns at the same time. Queen d2 protects this pawn. Now this is a mistake because now we're able to take this knight and we just ruined white's pawn structure. So we already got what we wanted. We've equalized the position. We're actually slightly better. And the main reason, like what caused me to take this knight, was the fact that this queen was not on d1. So obviously once this queen moves out of the pin, this knight is free to move. So if I didn't take this knight, played something like e6, this knight could have gone somewhere else in the future, or even bishop e2 would have kind of stopped this whole threat. This pawn structure would no longer be ruined. So I knew immediately that the moment the queen moved, I had to take this knight. Anyways, e6, we've traded off the light square bishop. Now we're putting all of our pawns on the light squares. Very standard stuff. Knight c3, and we play a6. a6 was just a preemptive measure to stop either of these pieces from coming out here. Very simply, bishop d3 and knight e7. So this is a very common theme in the Caro Kann, is to place this knight on e7 and then on f5 or g6, depending on where you want this knight to go and where you want it to attack the pawns. So currently the kind of backward pawn is located on d4, so ideally this knight goes to f5. We got a3, and I played g6. So what I want to point out here is that I could have played bishop b4 and would have arguably been alright. And then I could have played knight e7 and just castled. But once I played knight e7, we realized that knight g6 is just a stupid looking move because it doesn't actually target anything. And I cannot play knight f5 right away because then my pawn structure is going to be ruined. So if I play knight f5 here, this bishop trade happened, this would have been a very ugly pawn structure. And obviously white would be significantly better. Like even right now this pawn is hanging, so we would want to obviously avoid that. Now, I cannot develop this bishop anywhere. So what do? I play g6. g6 is a multi-purpose move. It allows this knight to jump into f5. So if this bishop trade happens, I will simply recapture the g pawn. Then I will not castle the king side. I'll be able to place my rook on g1 or g8, sorry, and just go down this file, be very, very aggressive. And this bishop also has a spot for development. So after g6, we got knight a4. This is a simple thread, just trying to attack my queen and also play this knight on c5. I dropped this queen to c7. This is one of the main reasons why queen b6 wasn't exactly the greatest move of all time, but, still fine. We got rook c1 and knight f5. So I complete the jump. This is exactly what I wanted. Now this bishop has a choice between going here or wherever it really wants to, depending on how my opponent responds. So this bishop trade does occur. Now if the opponent didn't take this knight and instead did something like castling, I could play knight h4 and just target this pawn. If this bishop slid back, there are like ideas with just bishop e7, normal development. This position is very close to equal, so nothing really exciting happening here. Now instead, I apologize. Now instead, our opponent captured our knight. I recaptured the g-pawn, and now I have this very, very strong kind of pawn chain, essentially, and I don't need a castle. So the king is exceptionally safe in the center. It is protected by all of these pawns, and there's really no need to castle now. What has changed is that this g file is now kind of open for the taking. So this knight jumped into c5, kicked it away b6. b6 might have not been the greatest move, pretty weakening, but it did the job. And then I played rook c8. Now instead of rook c8, I could have also played rook g8. He plays rook g1, so he prevents me from placing this rook on g8. This is one of the main reasons I really should have just took this open file right away instead of playing rook c8. But it really doesn't matter because after bishop b7, I was planning on playing king d7, connecting these rooks together, and then just playing rook g8. Now here the opponent makes an interesting move, which I thought was a mistake. Bishop g5 just allows me to play the rook to g8. Now this capture is obviously impossible because this would blunder this rook with check. And so I just was able to easily develop my rook. King e2 connects the rooks, and here I spot a very clever idea with taking these pieces. We trade completely. Now this queen no longer supports the pawn, so this is the main reason that I offered all these trades. I do also spot that despite what I do, this check is always a possibility, and then after something like king e7 and this check once again, I could just like to king d7 and my king would be safe. So here, the point of my move was just I win a pawn with this check. This is not losing anything because obviously this queen is not capturable since it's check. The point was, if this king was to move somewhere, I could always just go back to c6, and I would be very, very happy in this position. I'd just be up material. Very nice stuff. The reason that the eval isn't so fond of this is because there is some compensation for white with these annoying checks. Like I mentioned, the king is pretty safe, but these pawns can get targeted very easily, and, you know, go figure. So instead of that, though, my opponent played something strange here. He decided to take this knight, and what ended up happening was I was just up in exchange. So if this occurred, it would have been a knight versus rook endgame. This still would have been somewhat difficult to convert, but I had plenty of time, and, you know, this is a completely lost position for white. So it was very odd that my opponent decided to move this, but I guess it goes to show that everybody is human too, and 2300s can make just the exact same mistakes as anybody else. So after capturing this, my opponent realizes that he cannot trade queens or is going to be completely losing, and so he gives this check. Now, a very crucial moment. I needed to play king e7, because if I played king d7, this would have been completely lost. This would have been just devastating. Checkmate. So I needed to protect this pawn, and he gives this check. Now, this was just a desperation attempt. He ended up blundering his queen, and the game ended here. So he resigned at this point, but even if this check didn't actually do anything, I could have just played king d7. And at that point, I would just be up material, and there's absolutely nothing that the opponent could do. So overall, this was a super instructive game. One thing I want to emphasize is this sort of structure where I have doubled f-pawns. It looks a little bit ugly, but it really isn't anything bad. This pawn can always get pushed in the future if it needs to. There's a lot of opportunities here for black. And also, the compensation lies in the fact that our king is very safe, surprisingly, and this rook can always come out and take this open g-file. So the game went really smoothly. I think what really set my opponent off was this bishop g5 move. This was arguably the first mistake of many, because after this trade, I simply won a pawn. Then this exchange kind of sacrifice happened, and I was simply able to win a queen at the end. So overall, it was a really, really, really fun game. Hope you guys learned something new from this. Found this instructional. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. Helps my channel out a ton, and it will help you stay notified for when my future videos come out. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this sums up everything I wanted to show you for this video. If you enjoyed this video, please consider checking out a video to my left. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in a future video.